with drones, the new threat from the sky. So please give a very warm welcome to Dom Brack.
Thank you. So you want to wait a minute or two, or? Oh, okay, I will go ahead. All right. So the new asymmetric threat, as I announced this speech, just a little bit about me, not that much. I'm actually working in infosec, information security, not just IT security, and for the largest Switzerland telecommunication provider, majority government owned. We do all sorts of business, police, military, classified work, etc. And it appears that I also have become the kind of the recycle bin for cyber oddities. So wherever if there's something which appears to be important or very expensive and they don't know where to drop it, they drop it on my desk. It was very similar with that topic of the drones, which I wanted to show you today, and hopefully it will get a lot of people excited about the topic as well from an information security perspective, and they can start working on this, as we don't have enough infosec people anyway. So from the perspective of the drones, there's a lot of talk about the cooperative drones. These are the nice ones, the pleasing ones, the ones who will bring you the shoe or whatever. Cooperative drones are the ones you use for filming, normally in the sky, doing that job, and it's actually fantastic, but that's not my world. My world is this one. It's the non-cooperative drones. It's the one which don't do what they're told to do, or they don't care about some law, or don't care about some other things, and that's the ones which actually make us sleepless nights, or can give us a headache for organization, for events, for operators of critical infrastructure, and for specific cyber problems. My frame of mind, I usually have really to declare this, because since I go to clients and talk about risks, they expect a person who's just into risk management. And if you look at some things like if a glass is half full or half empty, my glass is not empty, my glass is on the floor, broken, the water is spilled, a person is coming, slipping, and actually suing you. So that's my frame of mind. So sometimes it seems a bit much, but I'm professionally paranoid, so my clients don't have to be. So this is my side. And also I'm really hard believer in if you need to play defense from this drone or from the threat of drones, from this emerging risk, as I place it, you need to understand the attacks. The attack possibilities, the different attack vectors. You need to know what can hit you, how can it hit you, and how hard. And if it's really a threat for you or not at the end. How did the topic find me? It may be a bit odd. I hope the topic will find you as well in this regard. But we have been approached from one of our critical infrastructure operators. They were looking for a solution. Drones were a threat for them, or a perceived threat at this point in time. There haven't been many attacks, if you look from this perspective. There have been a lot of safety incidents, but not attack as such. But nevertheless, some of our clients are really aware of future risks, and I wanted to have an opinion about, is this really a problem? What type of problem can this be for us? Is it just, a revolving gun, and we don't have to invest anything? Then very particularly Switzerland has become like a bit of a place for drone startups and drone services. Of course, we also work with hospitals, doing risk assessment, hosting their servers, etc. So an e-healthcare provider approached us for doing flights between two of their hospital sites, where they exchange blood samples. They came to us with that, and I'm actually really happy they did, because we looked at it from the perspective of the Data Protection Act for healthcare information. If you do information security, GDPR alike, you know what I'm talking about. You have to make sure everything is processed correctly in every status of the process. And now for exchanging patient information, respectively, for this one it was blood samples, you had to make sure the same thing. So Usually handling samples from a laboratory includes that you always know who was handling these samples, at what time, and which person gave the samples to the other person. And you even need to have proof of this, according to our Switzerland Health Protection Act. Same thing here with the drones. They wanted to know if this is posing a risk for them, if they're sending blood samples. And I tell you, there are some risks with that, because the process has been totally cut. If you're checking in blood samples into a drone between hospitals, it's a little box. You're checking them in, they fly, check them out, but there is no accountability. The MPA or the doctor checking the sample in, there is not the app at the moment, like declaring with your personal badge, I'm checking in now the sample in the drone, and I'm checking the sample out on the other side. So the process is broken. What this actually means, we don't know yet. We have fancy risks there. The blood sample can be changed. By the way, all this stuff is the same if you go into information security, if you go into networking, firewalls, why you build segregation, why you have all these features and processes in place. So their blood samples could be altered, changed, they could be denial of service, they're missing all of a sudden, etc., etc. And also government entities ask us about the risks these drones, and then I'm always talking about the civilian drones here, will pose to them. Because for the military drones, we have them in place, I know them as well, but Switzerland, the law is right that, we have them, they fly along the borders of Switzerland, but you have to have a helicopter behind them. So that's very interesting from a law perspective. Why are drones an infosec topic? Infosec is information security, and I do really think it's the best place for it, because people dealing with information security, they know about segregation, they know about risk management, they know about processes, and they know about hacking, changing, altering system, they know what integrity is, they know what confidentiality is, etc. Drones, from this perspective, are the worst flying IoT device you can imagine. If you remember the keynote, that ugly child, that's probably the cousin of that ugly child, right? So you must be aware of these risks, and also from this perspective, in the normal company, you combine physical security and IT security, more or less, it depends. We do this, for instance, in our shops, where we're selling phones, so the people which working there on physical security, on theft, measurements for stealing phones, etc., are working with IT security guys together. So that's where we join cyber risk and physical risk. Whatever will come out of it, if it become a sci-fis or phi-sci, you don't really know what's coming out of there. Here, I have you some data, and I brought a little one with me. Also, I will show you another one later. And let's see if I can give you an idea with this one here. It's a Skynet sticker on top of it. Quite fitting, I think. Let's try to start that one up. I just had to clean the blood from the blades from the last presentation, so take your head down, and hopefully it will work. Keeps fingers crossed. But it's actually the reason why I took a small one with me, because the other ones are totally unreliable. You have problems with signals, GPS, etc. And they're really a nightmare flying inside. Get that one up for a sec. So, as you can see, this is just a standard one, very easily. You can move it around. It's based on an app. It's difficult to speak and watch the drone and all these sorts of things together. But here, I would just want to give you a couple of specs around the drones. So drones can fly or are 0 to 100 in about 3 seconds. So they're faster than really most of the sports cars. Stopping distance within 5 meters. They have a maximum speed of around 185. I do know we have a drone racing guy here. Is it even more now? I don't know. These records change basically weekly, how fast they are. Altitude is a topic. If you look at it from a risk perspective, it's about 3.8 kilometers in height. Flight times up to 45 minutes, not that one, obviously. Payload up to a person, not me in the first place, someone else. Reach, there's often a discussion in this area. Let's see if we can get that one down. I mean, at the end of the day, they will come down. It just depends when, right? None of them actually stays up here. So. It's really a bit. Oh, there's an update on my iPhone. Okay. No. So. It doesn't really like that. You can see it. So. I mean, and that's just a small one. Imagine what the big ones do to you. So, reach, we often have a discussion about reach. Drones are remote controlled, so they use a frequency of 2.4 or 5.8 gigahertz. Can use also different frequencies. But the discussion there is you can equip them with a mobile device, and then the reach is worldwide. You control them over the mobile network. So I can fly a drone from New York, and the drone is in Germany somewhere, which makes it, you know, the logic, it's accountability, or where does the attack come from, it makes it quite hard. So the discussion about, oh, a drone is a risk, the pilot must be somewhere within 2 kilometers, it depends, huh? He can be anywhere. That's really one of the problems. Then costs, a couple of $100 to even more, depending on how they are equipped with cameras. They're based on GPS systems, some of them, for using them. You fly them either through visual line of sight, pre-programmed waypoints, so you're not involved in it, or you can use them with FPV goggles, like the racing drone here, which has a small camera mounted, and then you have the goggles on for flying. So I will maybe, you can have a look at it later. This also limits somehow what you can do with the drone and how you can actually defend against your drone, I guess. First, here are a couple of links relevant for Austria. Where can you fly? How can you fly? Usually it comes down to a weight limit in most countries. So drones, 250 grams, that's a bit more than 100, or 350 grams count as toys, which I think is not really true, but from a legal perspective. And drone above, either you need to have a training, or you can fly them in open areas. Switzerland has a map on the internet. You can see where you can fly and where not. Austria has an app, as I've seen, for the phone. You can use the app and it will tell you, I am allowed to fly here or not. Some of the drones have these flight restrictions built in, so it will tell you when you start, okay, it's not allowed to fly in here, you're near an airport, etc. Some drones, like this one, has just the pure electronics for flying. There is no GPS, nothing, no stabilization, and of course they really don't care about no-fly zones. Here are the links to this. Drones is also a bit what I call a FUD topic, fear, uncertainty and doubt. It's from this perspective of risk management, it's a circus. It's one of those low maturity topics. No one really knows how to handle it. What is this drone now? Is this a physical threat? A cyber threat? Who is looking after this? If you're a critical infrastructure provider, you can always look at the good sides, like transporting of medications, inspection of power lines, whatever, making aerial pictures, distributing trachea, the little box the farmers use, etc., etc. But if this lands on your data center, what do you do? Who is looking after it? Who thinks it's a threat or not? Who is investigating it? It's an innovation topic, so basically weekly there are new companies with new services, like there's a like a flying policeman drone for inspecting your chemical plants. There is drones for weather satellites, inspection of the weather, etc., etc. And always there is also like a startup mentality with those things. If you know that in the beginning of cloud services, same thing. Startup mentality, low process maturity is big risks. So what that really means is you have to test. You really have to test. And I'm talking here about the drone defense solution. I will show you a bit later. Drone defense means, in the first place, drone detection. So you have sensors, you have software, which looking or scanning the area you define for drones, try to identify them, try to locate them, and give you some idea what you can do about it, doing triangulation of the pilot and the drone, for instance. And if you go one level further, they can even defend or taking drones down. I can tell you now, that's the hardest part because of some legal problems, like jammings, for instance, Davos, where the WEF is, World Economic Forum, they have 3 drone defense solutions in place, and they're actually allowed to use jamming, but it's only the police which can use jamming, or the military. As a private company, you cannot use jamming technologies to take drones down. And also with this drone defense solution, we tested them, the ones which are available at the market. And I can tell you, I have an older drone, you will see that in a little movie later. None of these solutions detected my drone. And it's a DJI, the white one. It's not that small. So there is limitation in technology and in detection technology, and also how you have to program the systems. One of the systems is actually hacking into the communication between the pilot and the drone. It works very effectively, it's very good, but it's limited in the type of drones you can take down with it. And if you look just in one of these, I don't know, media market, how many drones are available, you know for how many drones you would have to inspect the protocols, you would have to do the proof of concept, and then you can hack the protocols for those drones. So really, if you're looking for drone defense solution, if you have to evaluate, do this very, very carefully. There is no 100% solution available. I can tell you that. We then, from our side, that's me and my colleague, worked then on a drone threat catalog, because there is no real information out there, there is no structure, no method to the topic. So we came up with the catalog where we collected all the possible threats coming through drones. Our catalog is now about 140 risks. Here are some of these risks listed. You can have the risk of spying, espionage, so the drone is actually equipped with laser-mounted microphones. The drone is also perfect for insider threat. The drone can fly somewhere, reading your flip chart and go away. That's one of those risks of the 140 risks. The drone can hack personal medical equipment, for instance. It can do the same thing you do with hacking. It can just fly, and that's perfect. If you have nuclear plants with physical fences, the fences are no longer a problem. If you have skyscrapers or you have nice apartments, rooftop apartments, it doesn't really bother you because you can fly up there. So it's an extension of all the hacking tools you can imagine. They can be brought there. For instance, it's so much better. I do a bit of social engineering work as well. If you drop a USB stick in a parking lot of a nuclear plant inside the fence, the memory stick is so much better than if it's somewhere else in a public space, because people don't realize, you know, they have the fence, you go in there, you give your badge, you have to leave your identity card, there's a barrier, there's a guy with a gun, and then you go in, and then you park, and have all this stuff. You kind of don't realize the sky is still open above you. So a memory stick placed at the right place has so much more credibility with the payload on it. Then the risk of kinetic, that's just the drone, and that could be intentionally or unintentionally. You hit someone or something. You chase in a national park the animal to death. Drones have been dropped into geysers. like the Old Faithful in Yellowstone National Park. You can provoke what we call economic attacks. If you have one or several drones and you launch them at the same time, you're provoking a response, either from military, from a private company, or from the police. They have to answer to those threats. A drone costs you a couple of $100. You fly up. If you fly 10 up of them, they have to deal with 10 risks or problems. If you fly up 100, it compounds. So that's what I mean with economic attacks. Or you can provoke a reaction which actually costs more money than the drone. Drone is a couple of $100. A rocket is 1.5 million. It works perfectly, but it's a mismatch, right? Then you have privacy intrusions, of course, which you can do all kinds of recordings, behavioral, habitual. What do the people do? Are they in holidays? Do they go out? Do they have a dog? Where are their kids? All these type of things. The normal craziness, right? Evidence and crime scene is an interesting one. I discussed this also with our police forces. Destruction, tampering, alteration as a service. So if you have a crime scene, you have a nice tape around, you have a perimeter either by emergency services and police. You take a drone as a service, you can drop whatever you want, things that don't belong there, things that should be there. You can maybe even remove things that can't be found anymore. So the drone gives you so much possibilities to change risk and perception. I think it's really a threat. It has to be considered. Then the theft of tangible items, abductions, of course, children or pets, it's possible. Nice little dog, get probably the most money, ransomware, technical. And with theft, it's also with these risks, you know, we talk internally. And then people kind of laugh at us and say, yeah, all right, you're into that stuff, I understand, but you know, these risks don't really materialize. Maybe eventually, that's too far-fetched, but just about 2 weeks ago, we had a theft based on a drone. So a drone was detected in New Zealand, and the statue was stolen. But I have to admit, the statue was too heavy. It was bronze. The drone was just used for actually spying if the people were there, if there were some dogs, and then the statue has been stolen. So, but still, money living in your rooftop apartment and expensive watches could be a problem in the future. Then, of course, since we wanted to make structure to this risk so we can work on this risk and actually tell our clients, you really have to spend money or not, we basically put all this risk into categories so you can actually make sense out of them. We have payload, everything you can drop, and everything that will be dropped. We have the category of signal hacking, hacking into building management systems, for instance, with the help of a drone. Of course, all the privacy intrusion. We have lots of VIP properties along our Lake of Geneva. That's one point. Definitely computer system hacking. You can place repeaters at places which are just too far away to access, of course. You work together with an insider, either to get or bring information inside in highly controlled environments. Intrusion trespassing, of course. Civil disobedience. So organizations which are organizing events actually using the drones to create their own footage, for instance. Kinetic attacks, just the drones. Surveillance, of course, espionage, and economic attacks. So we have 11 attack vectors. We also looked at the specific ones, the CBR and NE threats. It's defense specific. What type of chemicals? How high are the payloads? The possible payloads to drop, and what other type sorts of misfortune you can create with drones. And of course, narcotics, it's for our prisons, when the drone actually is smuggling stuff, contraband, guns, ammunition, money, whatever, phones, SIM cards, you can imagine. Then we have the countermeasures. We looked at the countermeasures available. So we do have missiles. We have birds. Birds have been trained in Geneva and France for this. You can have electromagnetic impulse. You can use projectiles. That's a very difficult one. Highly unlikely you will hit, except with the shotgun maybe, but drones with 185 kilometers an hour, it will pass here in less than a second. I don't know who will shoot that. Risk is too high. Payload, you drop something on this object. You can cyber, what one company from Israel is doing. You can do jamming, perfect. It's actually the best way to fight the drones, but it's not allowed for the normal people. You use geofencing or restricted airspace. That's like an administrative measure. No-fly zones, shutters, so drone defense systems are actually connected to the building management system. If the drone approaches, it will close basically the shutters. And you can use another drone basically to take the one down which is annoying you. These are the countermeasures. And as you can see, they're not perfect. They're no way near perfect for having creating a reliable defense. But that's what at the moment is possible. I mean, missiles, obviously, not for everyone, of course. Out of this, we put together a threat radar. So for every object, if it's a place, a location basically, if it's an event, we have different events. We have 2020, we have the Young Olympics. So they are at different sporting places around Switzerland. It could be an event like this one, or critical infrastructure, you do a threat radar. That's then, you put everything together. You take the risks, you take the countermeasures, and you put that into a radar, basically telling you, from this perspective of terrorists, we could have payload attacks, we could have an economic attack, and actually you can't barely see it here, but there is little dots which go towards the inside. That's the expected movement of the risk if untreated. So this is what you do for maybe if you have a cinema at the lake, or if you have a public viewing, if you have a rock concert, whatever. Then of course, as we are working in this area, we don't just believe what we see. We tested ourselves. Fortunately, I had a very old drone with a broken camera, which was just sitting in the basement. We modified that one with this little payload device here. That's this one. Mounted it. You can fill it with anything you want, and you can drop it. You can use it multiple times, except if you use explosive, of course. And then test it. How hard is it to drop something? How much payload you can hang onto a drone? Because there's a lot of myth in this topic as well. I will show you now little summary. Here is just some payload examples. Ammunition. I'm a beekeeper. There's some fantastic chemicals available if you want to. And I'm sure people, as stupid as they are, usually they will just do anything you can possibly imagine or not imagine. But I will show you now some samples of what we did of our payload drops. Of course, there's not much available. You have to do everything on your own. There's no standard, so you just have to try. Also with the test, we wanted to see how hard is it to fly a drone? Can it be done by everyone? How hard is it to actually hit something? How reliable is it, etc. So here's just, as I thought, dropping of a USB stick with a nice flag on it. And you will use a lot of props, of course, because your drone will fall down. Then putting on some more heavier objects onto the drone and see how accurately you can drop them. Is that a problem? Is that hard? Is it easy? Etc. I can just tell you now it's quite easy. That's another release device where you can hang something on it. It's not the bomb, actually. It's a little concrete block. Also, the idea was to use what's available. The idea was not to use some high-tech stuff, to build something or even construct boards or what the hell. It was really the idea of what is there in your household normally, what is available standard and broadly, and then try and do and see the effects. Is it working or not? Here's like a little getting the idea of releasing some other materials, maybe extinguishing a fire or doing the opposite. It depends with what is filled, but just gives you an idea of what can be done. It's easy to fly, it's easy to set up. Usually you have everything in your vicinity of the household, and there we go. So it will also be easy to actually create or recreate those type of attacks with more malicious intent, of course. After testing, I also figured some of the tests were not really, we should have taken more precautions, but I will tell you later about it. And you should have a lot of space around you. And we do also said we don't want to do any like kind of chemical or other stuff, destructive stuff. So here is that one. We wanted to see how this one flies, how stable it is, if it's moving away in windy conditions, and how it actually impacts if you go up high. But it was just filled with maybe 500 grams of flour. Not flowers. Would be nice too. But and it's really easy. It flies perfectly. This gives you just some ideas around the topic. There are obviously to consider primary risk with that. What you do and actually is happening, cause and effect of this, but there's also what we call the secondary risks. And we had these incidents. We had drones flying with this double eagle flag thing, and you know the problem with Switzerland and that, in a stadium, actually then they cancelled the soccer play because of that. And the secondary effect, that's Germany, that's not a picture associated or a problem with the drone, but this is what we describe as a secondary risk. The effect it will have if you drop something. If people get into a mass panic and just wanted to leave, although maybe nothing really is a threat coming from a drone. So that's one of the problems you have to consider as well if you look at events, for instance, soccer stadiums, etc. Of course, drone detection is not drone defense. I think that's one of the most important conclusions. And detection is just the way you try to figure out if you can see a drone. So this drone is Bluetooth, this one is RC, other drones are with waypoints. So you have to use different detection technologies. The drone's using RF radio frequency sensors for detecting the drone. And the funny thing is, I will show you later a sensor, it picks also up all the access points, the 2.4 gigahertz access points and 5.8, because this one is using 5.8 gigahertz for video and 2.4 for the radio signal. It will also, for these sensors, will find all the access points. It's quite nice. It's noisy, the logs you generate, but it's okay. If you wanted to have a comprehensive detection though, you need to have cameras, you need to have visual identification of the drones, and you need to have microphones, so you can listen if a drone is flying, if the drone is not using, for instance, radio frequency. And then thirdly, additionally to the RF sensors, radio frequency sensors, you will need a radar, what's called a Doppler radar. And that's the normal radar the airplane using and the airports are using. So with this radar, you will find the objects in the sky which are not using electronic, basically, to communicate or fly around. So for a full detection, it's quite comprehensive. And also there's a lot of false positives. So with Doppler radar, for instance, you will find the cooling systems on top of the trucks. The propellers, it will detect them as false positives and birds and all sorts of stuff. So that's why I said testing and really see where you need defense and why you need it. Usually, I recommend a two-step approach. First, you want to detect and record, and of course, triangulate. So you can send your security stuff where you think the pilot of the drone is, and take the drone down and the pilot, of course. And this you should do in a forensic grade manner, so that it actually can be used by the police or by the prosecution, depending on what damage has been done, to prosecute the pilot of the drone. Of course, when registration is there, it will become easier, but you're not talking about the good guys here, talking about the bad guys. Secondly, is what we call active mechanisms. So take down and actually block even the start of a drone. Here's a little example. We have 1st of May. It's Workers' Day in Switzerland. Demonstrations in all the cities. Always happens every year. We put out our sensors That's a drone defense centers in Bern, that's the capital, and one in Zurich. What we additionally did, what you can't see, we actually took the existing solution, put it into the cloud, and used gateway, so we cut the cables to connect our sensors. Typical solution is bound to Ethernet cabling only and local. So we have now sensors in 2 cities, reporting to the system in the cloud, and we access the cloud to get this information out. As you can see, that was an old table, and that was a head rack we had to use this to mounting the sensors. Then this is how a detection log actually looks like. So we can detect the drone, the time, the flight time, the manufacturer, and the model, as far as they have it in their database, as I told you before. It's not everything will be detected. It's not the case. Then you have to do manual forensics. That's quite a cumbersome process. I hope technology will advance, or you can use other systems to actually look at this information and make from a information perspective more sense out of it. So we had the first drone at 12 o'clock with 17 seconds flight time. The last one, just when it was getting dark, we had 12 events, 1 flight over a minute, etc. And we did that on the 1st of May because we just wanted to see, is there some drone-related activity around the protests? And we thought maybe we pick something up, maybe we don't. One sensor was far away, one was actually closer. And we picked some of information up, but not much. Later on that day, we looked at it. Also, yeah, you can't really see that. But then this picture sparked our attention because from the angle it was taken and from the content, it was from the protest, of course, but it was somehow too high up. And we don't have, we have flight restrictions in our cities, so no drones are allowed to fly. Also no drones from journalists or whatever. So this picture kind of caught our attention. Then especially that guy down here, it's like finding Wally sometimes. He looks up. Okay, we thought, angle, strange. Guy looking up, okay, I don't know what's there. We then took the information from the public place, that's these figures here. So either he was looking up here, which was unlikely with the angle, or he was looking in the sky. So either he had smoked marijuana or had a vision, or he saw something. We took the latter. So we assumed, of course, it was a drone because we had technical data, we now have this data, and we combined the information. The only thing left was, actually, we figured out who probably has taken the picture. It was, of course, a journalist, otherwise it wouldn't be in the newspapers, blah, blah, blah. The only thing left would actually obtain the drone, seize it, and then we would have proof. And I really asked the police, and even I said, please, but they didn't follow my lead and wanted to seize the drone, but that would be the last bit of evidence. So this is where it's going with drone defense and detection. And we will actually working on it, thank you, working on a system where we actually protect smart cities, or where we going to start protecting embassy areas with this type of information. And then I know if some protester or whatever is flying in Zurich, and with the right information, there is more information in the log files, what we call an RSSI chart. It's kind of like a fingerprint of the remote control of the drone. At the moment, we are determining if the information is reliable enough to count as like a fingerprint. So can I really say that drone flying there, based on the chart, model type, flight length, to the drone in another city? Because that would be our goal. Of course, only for the destructive ones. Because, of course, it's always the same guys who are doing that. So it's going into this direction slowly. Then, testing is dangerous. That was my window. I was lucky it was not my wife's car. And I'm usually really lucky with that because it was the window which had the antenna in it. And it was around $400 to replace that one. So it would be great if other professional testers would keep up with drone testing and so on, so I don't have to pay for new windows all the time. Then there was something other curious. We figured out, or I figured out the hard way, there is actually something like a typical drone injury. I didn't know before, and actually I was quite lucky. I figured it out kind of the soft way. It's like fish gills, and it looks like that. A drone usually gives you multiple cuts in the same perpendicular direction. And I figured it out that can't be. So if you really have to look for a guy who's playing with drones and doing stupid stuff, you probably have to look for this type of injuries, I guess. So, you know, that must be the drone guy. So you have to up safety. Definitely I can recommend that if you do testing. And we had this actually in Switzerland, we had landings of drones on top of data centers. They were analyzed forensically. We really don't know why. It was more than one data center. As a telco, we are also part of the critical infrastructure operators of the country, where these operators meet. It's banks, it's telcos, etc. And banks had drone landings on their data centers, and we had also. We looked at the drones. Of course, you are too late. You will discover the drone maybe a week later, and we don't know. Why is it there? What was the intention? Was there something happening or not? Was it just an accident? A kid playing? We have no clue. We don't know. And by the way, data centers are quite prone to drone incidents because of their cooling systems on the rooftop. You should be careful with those ones as well. If you drop it into the chute, you can have really a disaster. Then if you find one, or you have to seize one or get one or whatever, really don't touch that thing. It's really a bad idea. It can cut off your finger. You can have a look at this one. These are really hard and sharp. Those ones, of course, are a bit better. They even have a small protector, but it can end really, really badly. Also, we installed sensors on the rooftop of the police forces to see what's going on in their city. So we identified if there have been allowed flights, or for instance, journalists making nice pictures of whatever buildings and stuff, or if there were also flights which were not allowed. And also the instructions there are clear, so really be careful when touching. You never really know if the drone is like armed or not, and it will end badly. So do this, gloves, or put a towel over it, and look what's happening. I also have here a little movie showing you a bit more what could happen or not. And I'm finished basically with that one. Whilst watching how we made vegetable soup back home, I can ask some questions. Here you just see how you can cut through all that stuff easily with both of the drones. That's the DJI I used, and also with this one here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tom. You just gave us another reason why you should always have a towel with you. Yes. Questions. We have a few minutes for questions. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. Probably one of the most knowledgeable guys about drones in the room. Use it. Yes.
It's more of a joke question, but do you really have birds that disable drones?
Yes.
How does that work? I mean,
yes.
Do the birds get
I think to give credit, France started the first test with obviously predator birds, and then Switzerland, Geneva did as well. And you trained the birds. Basically, you put a piece of meat on top of the drone, and you trained them to catch it. Of course, they also get hit by the propellers, but it's not that bad of an injury because it's not like muscles. It will injure them, of course. But the problem with the birds is about a couple of drones, they're fed up with this. So you cannot have a soccer stadium and 20 birds. Because if they have done it 2 or 3 times, they're not interested anymore. And as a stadium, you have to have a zookeeper. Otherwise, Greenpeace will knock on your door and say, you're mistreating birds, what the hell. But it worked, and it was really good defense because they were looking at it and there was no impact on on the public, like people on the ground or some secondary damage or whatever, it was actually quite good. It worked. They tested it with birds.
Just a comment on this type of the birds attacking drones. It is true, but birds usually use protection for the paws to be able to attack the drones without getting hurt. Just a comment.
Yeah.
So if we're fed up with IT, we can always move into zookeeping.
Yes.
Further questions? Yes.
You mentioned sensors that you were placing. These were the Doppler radars or something else?
No, we used for our testing, we used the D-Drone, the German company, which is quite good in this regard. They have a lot of systems, and we used the company. It's not advertising. We just tested them, okay? And we used Convexum. It's a small Israeli startup, and they're really good in this. And there are other systems, like more military system-based, BA, Raytheon, etc., Meritis, Cerber from France. There are a lot of systems, but you really need to look at which system fits your purpose.
Yeah, I've seen the big ones with the cameras and towers, but these were small ones, so
Yeah.
it was detecting radio frequencies.
Sorry, they were?
It was detecting radio frequencies.
The detection radius is about 2 to 3 kilometers.
No. So it was the principle of the sensors was detecting radio frequencies.
It's 2.4 and 5.8.
Okay, thanks.
But some of the hobby pilots, like the other planes, are maybe on 20 or 40 gigahertz, or they have given out other frequencies, and those one you won't see. And this drone here, the DJI, is actually a US version I'm using. It also has a bit more, how you call it, more exit power than it should have, and it's inversed. So the remote control has 5.8 and the video signal is 2.4, and it's through all the system off. My drone was never detected by any of those systems, which is really scary, is it? Because that's the one with the bomb on it. So that has to be done more with those systems. Needs more work, or you need to have a layered approach. Don't use just one defense. It's like network security. Don't use just one technology. You have to layer it.
I like the short questions. Could we keep the answers also short?
So you're saying your drone will not get detected, but you also said about the detection approach with audio, so with listening, right, with microphones.
Yeah.
So how can your drone not be detected by
No,
microphones?
with radio frequency.
Okay.
Of course, if you visually, if you're using microphone or Doppler, you would see it.
And we are actually out of time. So thank you very much again. Dom, thank you.